Good morning. I thought I'd try something new this week and give you a little bit of a preview of the sermon for this coming Sunday. This week, I've been thinking a lot about just my anxiety level as I've talked with other people, as I've done Bob Coleman's funeral and all of that. I've noticed that there is just within myself a tendency to be focusing on the bad news. And I think that this has been harmful to me and to my spirituality. I think it's been harmful to the relationships in my life. It puts me on edge. I'm short with the children. And I think it's time for us to start to talk about that and to think about what are the things that we are doing to follow God's word, to think on what is lovely and pure, and to continue to stay informed, but to keep everything in the appropriate proportion. So if news and coronavirus news and Facebook and all of that are the loudest voices in our lives right now, it becomes disproportionately bad news. And we need to spend time as Christians longing for the pure spiritual milk of God's Word. And so that's my encouragement for us this week. The sermon title will be called, "What's That Taste in Your Mouth?" That comes from 1 Peter chapter 2, which says this: "Like newborn infants, long for the pure spiritual milk, that by it you may grow up into salvation, if indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good." We have tasted that the Lord is good, and yet, as I talk with you, as I myself experience, there is this taste in our mouth of just doom and dread and fear. But we have tasted and seen that the Lord is good. But do we keep cramming in our mouths things, in our hearts, in our minds, things that are causing us to forget the sweetness, the goodness of the taste of the Lord? My encouragement for you this week is to read 1 Peter 2, 1 through 10, be preparing for Sunday and for the sermon that we'll hear on that. But also, perhaps, as we've gone through now 6, almost 7 weeks of fasting from fellowship together in God's house, perhaps now's the time to consider how to begin fasting from all of the noise from outside of God's Word, from the news, from Facebook, from the negativity. I'm not saying that you can't watch the news or that you shouldn't turn to Facebook from time to time, but let's consider what is the right proportion of those things. Myself, I've found it very helpful to sign up for Governor Beshear's text messages, so that at the end of the day, without even watching the news conferences and things like that, at the end of the day, I get a text and a very helpful summary of what was said in the news conference. It keeps me informed, up to date as far as what new regulations and guidelines there might be, but it also keeps the television off and keeps the news and keeps the cacophony of, honestly, negativity just at bay, which frees me up to spend time with my children, or spend time in prayer with my wife, or devotions with the kids. Spend some time in the upcoming weeks fasting from the social media that you may have just been drawn into. I get it. I feel that draw too. But spend more time in God's Word, just tasting and seeing that He is good. And watch how He begins to just push out that fear and anxiety. Another thing that God's Word is able to help us do is to see how other believers in other ages have gone through very similar circumstances. And so I'd encourage you, one of the books that I'm reading right now is the book of Daniel. And to see how Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, how Daniel himself faced being in a land full of people that didn't necessarily believe in God, certainly didn't believe in God, and even tried to make laws so that it was prohibitive to their right worship of God. They were still able to love and trust in God above all things and see how God would be their deliverer. And so spending time like in God's Word, in the history of God's deliverance of his people, is just a wonderful remedy to the fear and anxiety that we are experiencing right now, and a wonderful way to take this week's epistle lesson to heart. Let us long for the pure spiritual milk of God's Word. Let it grow us up into salvation, and taste and see that the Lord is good, both through what we hear, the gospel, the eternal gospel message, but then also as it draws us into his house so that we might receive his very body and blood for us through the bread and wine. There we do literally taste and see that the Lord is good. I pray that this preview of the Sunday message will be a blessing to you. God's grace and mercy be with you, and look forward to being with you soon.